the choice that still shapes money today. It wasn't framed as a choice about the future. It was framed as a response to the present, a decision made under pressure, with limited options and enormous stakes. Yet decades later, its influence still shapes how money moves, how risk is taken, and how stability is defined. To understand why this choice still matters, we have to go back to the moment when the system stood at a crossroads. One path favored restraint, uncertainty, and market discipline. The other promised coordination, confidence, and protection from extremes. Both paths carried risk. Only one offered immediate relief. The choice was made in the shadow of fear. Fear of collapse. Fear of panic. Fear of losing control. In that environment, delay felt irresponsible. Action felt necessary. And the promise of stability outweighed concerns about long-term consequence. At first, the results were undeniable. Markets calmed, trust stabilized, growth resumed. The system appeared not just repaired, but improved. What once felt fragile now felt managed. Confidence returned faster than anyone expected, but embedded inside that success was a shift in expectation. Money was no longer just a medium of exchange. It became a signal of support, of coordination, of intent. The system learned that outcomes could be guided, not just influenced, when pressure rose. This was the reveal beginning to surface. The choice had not simply restored stability. It had redefined it. Stability was no longer something that emerged naturally from interaction. It was something that could be produced. The early tension formed here. Producing stability works until behavior adjusts around it, until incentives change, until protection becomes assumption. The system did not resist this shift. It absorbed it. And absorption, once complete, is almost impossible to reverse. The choice that still shapes money today was not about saving the system in that moment. It was about deciding how much control the future would expect. As the choice settled into practice, its influence extended far beyond the moment that justified it. What was once exceptional became expected. Coordination replaced spontaneity. Guidance replaced discovery. The system began organizing itself around the assumption that stability would always be supported when it mattered most. Institutions adapted first. Planning incorporated the presence of backstops. Risk was assessed not only by exposure, but by proximity to protection. Decisions that once required caution now required alignment. Money flowed where support was most likely to appear. Markets followed quickly. Prices reflected not just fundamentals, but confidence in intervention. Volatility was interpreted as temporary noise rather than meaningful signal. Liquidity felt abundant because it was assumed to be reinforced if it thinned. The system learned to move faster under belief that slowing would not be allowed. This was the reveal deepening. The choice had reshaped incentives at the core. Money no longer responded solely to value. It responded to expectation, of response, of rescue, of coordination. Stability became less about balance and more about belief. The early conflict formed here. When money expects support, it behaves differently. Risk-taking increases where protection feels implicit. Discipline softens where correction feels unlikely. The system remains functional, but its sensitivity changes. Warning signs appeared quietly. Distortions in pricing. Compression of risk premiums. Dependence on timing rather than strength. None of this felt dangerous, because the choice had worked before. Confidence rested on repetition. But repetition creates habit. And habit, when shared across an entire system, becomes structure. The choice that still shapes money today was no longer just historical. It was active, embedded in how decisions were made every day. And embedded choices, once normalized, are the hardest to question. The conflict reached its emotional peak when the system began encountering limits it could no longer smooth away. Not collapse, not crisis, but strain. Situations where coordination slowed, where signals conflicted, and where the expectation of support introduced hesitation instead of confidence. Participants waited, not because action was impossible, but because timing felt uncertain. The belief that stability would be produced created a paradox. Acting too early risked misalignment. Acting too late risked exposure. The system hesitated between autonomy and expectation. This was the heart of the tension. The choice that once delivered relief had trained behavior to rely on confirmation. Money moved efficiently when direction was clear, but stalled when it was not. Markets reacted not to conditions alone, but to anticipation of response. Institutions felt the strain internally. Models assumed intervention speed that could not always be guaranteed. Coordination depended on consensus that took time to form. The system was strong, but only when its assumptions held perfectly. The emotional weight of this moment came from recognition. Stability produced through coordination is powerful, but fragile when timing slips. The system had not lost capacity. It had lost spontaneity. And spontaneity is what allows adaptation when guidance is unclear. Pressure accumulated quietly. Risk did not explode, it condensed. Dependencies tightened. Margins thinned. The system was still standing, but it was leaning on expectation rather than resilience. The buildup was complete. The choice that had shaped money for decades was now shaping its limits. And the question could no longer be avoided. How much stability can be produced before it starts replacing the very instincts that make systems survive? The resolution did not come from reversing the choice. It came from understanding it. The system did not abandon coordination, protection, or guidance. It learned where they belonged and where they did not. The climax arrived with a quiet but profound realization. Stability can be supported, but it cannot be manufactured endlessly without consequence. When systems rely too heavily on produced calm, they lose the instincts that allow them to respond when calm cannot be delivered on time. In response, priorities shifted. Resilience was redefined not as the absence of disruption, but as the ability to function through it. Money was expected to move with uncertainty again. Risk was allowed to signal before it was corrected. Adaptation regained value alongside coordination. The resolution reshaped the future. The choice that once shaped money was no longer treated as a guarantee. It became a tool, powerful but conditional. Stability was something to earn repeatedly, not something to assume permanently. What endured was the most important lesson of all. Systems do not fail because they choose stability. They fail when they forget why stability was chosen in the first place. Protection must support behavior, not replace it. Coordination must assist adaptation, not override it. The choice that still shapes money today is not about control versus freedom. It is about balance, about knowing when to intervene and when to step back. Because the future of money will not be decided by the next crisis alone. It will be decided by whether the system remembers how to stand when support is no longer immediate. So what do you think? Are we repeating the same mistake again? The